All right, let's get some more reaction now from independent news editor James Corbett joining us live here on the programme. A pleasure to see you. Thanks for coming on so quickly. We've certainly seen over the years a lot of carrot sticking, certainly from Washington and Capitol Hill towards Pyongyang, going back to the days of Clinton, George W. Bush, now into the Obama administration. And yet all these attempts to try and entice North Korea or dissuade it from using or even experimenting with nuclear weapons have never worked before. Can anything change now, do you think?
Well, I don't see how adding any more carrots to that mixture is going to do anything, especially as you say, it seems that North Korea has really frittered away all of the carrots that have been used against it, and it just shows that really trying to barter with them in that way seems to be completely useless. And of course, the last time was the $400 million aid package that they got after their first nuclear test in 2006. They got that aid package in 2007, and then conducted their next nuclear test in 2009. Here we are 3 years later with another nuclear test. So it doesn't seem that there's any incentives that are that could be placed on the table at this point, and there isn't a lot of leverage on the stick side, really, when you think about it, because a lot of sanctions that could be applied are already being applied. So it's really, I think, going to fall onto a lot of diplomatic pressure on China to use its leverage with North Korea in this.
Well, James, you bring up the issue of China. I'm glad you did. China was quick to condemn North Korea's nuclear test, the third one happening now in the past few years. However, this, as we all can imagine, this happened right in Beijing's backyard. Do you really think the officials in China didn't know in advance that this maybe was poised to happen? And do you think China can even influence the way the North Korean nuclear program is being operated on?
Well, I think everyone knew that this was going to happen. It was only a question of when, and I imagine that officials in Beijing must have known that this was coming probably in the next few days. And it certainly is. It couldn't have happened at a worse time, internationally speaking. It's the Lunar New Year in China, so basically the entire country is on holiday. And in the U.S., there is no confirmed Secretary of Defense or Central Intelligence Director, so it's a very interesting time. Throw into that the wild card of Xi Jinping. We don't know much about him or how he's going to lead China, and the fact that Kim Jong-un is a relatively new leader as well. You also have the new Abe government in Japan, and there's a lot of wild cards in this mix to see how this is going to shake out. But I think on the question of China specifically, I think it does have the most leverage over North Korea at this point, and certainly a lot of aid and support comes from China. So I think they have a lot of pressure that they can put on North Korea at this point, and I think that's what's going to be stressed in the UN Security Council meeting today.
Well, certainly that meeting happening just in several hours' time, a bit later, I suppose that'll be New York time back in the US. But certainly when it comes to the issues of Pyongyang doing this third underground nuclear test in recent years, James, I don't know about you where you are, but we are also getting reports, unconfirmed at this point, though, that Pyongyang could be poised to do yet another underground nuclear test. Are you hearing anything about that where you are?
Well, I heard before this test took place that there was plans potentially for 2 tests, and it may be the case that they are testing a plutonium device like the other 2 devices, the one in 2006 and 2009, as well as an enriched uranium device. That could be potentially very important, because if they have the technology to enrich uranium at this point, that could greatly expand their weapons stockpile and their ability to expand that stockpile. So I think there's going to be a lot of questions that we're going to have to determine precisely what kind of material they're using in these devices, and whether there could potentially be another one in the coming days.
Now, certainly North Korea does get some bad press in the Western media, but not nearly as bad as, for example, Iran. Now, Iran allegedly doesn't even have nuclear weapons. Here's Pyongyang, North Korea, exploding their own nuclear weapons underground. Why is so much of the global perception so different from North Korea to Iran?
I think it's just a question of geopolitics. I think there are things that a lot of the Western countries want in Iran and in that region, and it's a very important player in that region. When it comes to North Korea, there's no geopolitical prizes to be won here. The only thing that's on the table is a version of some sort of warfare. And well, it's hard to say at this point, but not a lot of people really believe that the North Korean regime would be suicidal enough to start a war. Although at this point, it seems that they are certainly putting it right to that brink. So it is, it's a question of what's to be gained from this region or from engaging with it. And there hasn't been a lot to gain from that. And that's why it has been sort of swept under the rug repeatedly. And of course, the biggest hypocrisy coming right during the lead up to the war in Iraq, when North Korea started its nuclear fear-mongering and was almost completely ignored by the Bush administration.
All right, live from Japan, independent news editor James Corbett joining us here on RT. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I would also like to